Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin. We have two great guests. Mollie Hemmingway, how are you?
Great to be here.
Pleasure. Joe Concha, good to see you.
Mark Levin, thanks for having me.
I want to talk about the media today. Especially want to talk about the recent media and events that have been taking place and how the media has covered them. And no better time to talk about the Kavanaugh nomination than now. The Media Research Center says that 90% of the news coverage has been negative toward Kavanaugh. Honestly, I'm surprised it's that low. It looks like 99.9% to me. You've both written about this. What's your take on this, Mollie?
I think this has been a really telling couple of weeks as we've watched the media cover a very contentious issue and a very complicated issue. You have allegations of assault and you have a man who's denying them. And the media coverage, I don't think, could have been much worse. When you saw the standards that were used in stories about, usually as a journalist, you have ideas about what standard must be met before you publish a story. I feel like a lot of publications have not held to those normally high standards. They're publishing allegations that are on their face farcical and treating them as if they were serious. They're running with stories for which there's no corroboration, and they're forgetting that this is a very serious issue, that this is a real man who has been accused of something and has no evidence to support the allegation, yet that had his life and his name and his honor and his reputation just dragged through the mud. It's even more important than the Supreme Court nomination. It's about who we are as a people and how we treat people who are accused of crimes.
It seems like basic norms, due process, these things that Western civilization has created over hundreds and hundreds of years, due process, presumption of innocence, evidence, a standard of proof, all these different things went out the window. Did they not, Joe?
Brett Kavanaugh, by many in our media, was deemed guilty until proven innocent. You brought up the Media Research Center. 344 minutes dedicated to the accuser's accusations of Kavanaugh, 21 minutes to Kavanaugh's denials. Not very good at math, but I believe that's more than the 15-to-1 ratio. And I compare it to the 2008 financial crisis, where everything just went off the cliff financially. For our media, everything went off the cliff here, because I think some people were holding out hope that because this is a Supreme Court nominee and the hearings that go around it, that there'd be some semblance, perhaps, of balance. And that didn't happen here. And I'll give you three stories that really stood out to me. USA Today. A sports columnist writes an op-ed saying that Brett Kavanaugh should no longer be around young girls and coach his daughter's basketball team because of the way that he's been shown to act around young girls. In other words, he's now a pedophile. That's amazing. They had to retract at least part of that story. Number two, NBC News puts Julie Swetnick, that's the third accuser, represented by Michael Michael Avenatti. I always conflate those two people. Yes. And they give her a national stage to make her claims against Kavanaugh, accusing him of gang rape. And apparently, she was 3 years out of high school, and she went back to high school parties, which in my day, if anybody from college came back to a high school party 1 year out, you thought that was weird. 2 years out, 3 years out, you're probably calling the police, like, what are you doing here, right? And then, oh, by the way, there's gang rapes going on, so why are you going back there? But then NBC News says, as a disclaimer, before the interview, we cannot corroborate anything that Swetnick is saying. So instead of killing in the interview, which you do in those situations, they want to be first instead of accurate, and they go ahead and give her a national stage anyway. Number three, New York Times story. Brett Kavanaugh threw ice during an altercation at Yale in 1985 in a bar. No charges were actually leveled in this situation, but the New York Times goes ahead with it anyway. And by the way, one of the co-writers of that story is an anti-Kavanaugh critic. If you look at her Twitter feed, the paper has to not retract the story, but admit they made a mistake. And they said literally, she is not a news reporter. She shouldn't have been assigned to it. Then how the hell did she get there? So you look at those three examples and you say to yourself, my goodness, our media is broken. And many, many people in this country will never, ever trust it again.
Mollie, do you think this was a watershed? Do you think the media have exposed themselves in the aggregate as utterly ideologically driven and in one direction? Do the media lead the Democrats, or do the Democrats lead the media?
It used to seem that the media were the communications arm of the Democratic Party. In recent years, they have behaved more as the generals who are directing which way the country should go and directing what Democrats should be doing. That's a serious problem because the media should be at least trying to attain some standard of objectivity. And I think the media have had a lot of benefit based on this view that they are good people who are trying to report the facts. We've given them a lot of credibility and honor. And yes, this is a watershed moment in that a lot of people are appalled by what they've seen. I think we just had 3 really good examples of what's so bad. But in fact, the last few decades have been including a lot of these moments. And I think that you can even understand the Trump victory. When you talk to people about why they voted for Trump, a lot of people mention that they were so frustrated with the media coverage. Even in apolitical senses, people are frustrated with the way they see the media cover a natural disaster or celebrity or any number of things. So yes, this was a very important moment. People could not see anything other than how biased everybody was being, but it's just actually the latest in a series of problems.
You know, Joe, even Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, and Ted Koppel the other day, he was on a panel. They were critical of CNN, too political. What would CNN do? What would the ratings be if Donald Trump wasn't around?
Koppel said they'd be in the toilet.
They'd be in the toilet. I'm very curious about this. What really is CNN at this point? Is it a news organization? Is it an opinion organization? Is it both? Is it neither? What is it?
I'll let Jeff Greenfield, who was with CNN, ABC, CBS, he's been in this business for decades. He's pretty well respected. Here's what he told Brian Stelter on Reliable Sources last Sunday. Quote, Greenfield to Stelter, "When I look at CNN, hour after hour after hour, I see panels rather than reporting, exchanging opinions, the overwhelming majority of which on this network I regard as quite critical or hostile to Trump." This is a guest and a former employee of the network telling a CNN anchor, this is who you are now.
But I actually think
and as you said, Ted Turner and then Koppel as well criticized the network all in 1 week. So you're not just noticing that. And we've seen it for a while, and I used to go on the network quite often, quite frankly. It's a different network than it even was maybe 3 years ago. And the difference is because Donald Trump came onto the scene, they used to film empty podiums during the campaign instead of Hillary Clinton giving a speech because he rated. And plus they thought he would never win. And then once he won, now they've gone overwhelmingly anti-Trump, and Harvard came out with a study showing that they are 91% negative towards the president. How do you say you're objective when numbers like that don't support it?
And I think it's worse than if it were just opinions, if it were just panelists giving their analysis where they might have it. It's the news reporting that is a serious problem, too. I mean, one of the examples you gave was of an opinion column, but a lot of what we saw that was so bad with the Kavanaugh stories were done by people who claim to be straight news reporters. And even take an example from CNN, when you had the ex-boyfriend of the initial accuser against Kavanaugh say that he saw some stuff that he felt was worth sharing, including that the accuser had once coached a friend on how to pass a polygraph, when later she'd given testimony saying that she didn't know anything about polygraphs, and a variety of other claims he was making. They didn't report that. They only reported when someone denied that had been the case.
And that's called the bias of omission. And that's what people don't see at home. You can be outwardly biased if you're an anchor and you clearly show you're supporting one side, but when you don't report things, then people at home don't even know it exists. If you watch CNN, you wouldn't even know that happened. I think one other problem that they have is that they label anchors who are not anchors. They are opinion people. Don Lemon is still called an anchor at 10 o'clock at night. Chris Cuomo is called an anchor at 9. Anderson Cooper is called an anchor at 8. You watch their shows. They are clearly giving opinions. And that, conflating those two things, I think is what builds to more mistrust when you're not labeling people as they should be. And there's nothing wrong, as you said, with being an opinion person. Hannity, Ingram, Carlson on this network, right? Mark Levin, you are opinion people. Embrace it. It's fine. Right. But stop pretending that you're anchors when you don't fit the label of just asking questions and getting to the facts.
Let me ask you this, too, though. I watched some of the coverage, a lot of the coverage, most of the coverage of the Kavanaugh hearings, and I was very unimpressed with most of the analysts, quote unquote. They were highly critical of Rachel Mitchell, who was hired by the Republicans, the Maricopa County sexual crimes prosecutor. She was going through methodically, interrupted by this 5-minute rule, which was very annoying, but still, you could tell, the audience could tell, we could tell, she was going through it methodically, pointing out the contradictions, pointing out the lack of corroboration. And she was trashed, almost uniformly. Trashed, they bring in some professors who trash her, some of the analysts are trashing her, and I went on the radio and said, well, wait a minute. she's the one that's actually laying out the case and some of the problems with Dr. Ford. Did you see that too?
Yeah, and it was very frustrating to watch because if you were a casual observer and you saw her going through these questions, well, Professor Ford was answering and revealing a lot of really interesting information, such as that it was false that she was afraid to fly. She's actually a global frequent flyer. And yet, in previous weeks, we'd heard that she couldn't fly out to the hearing because she had a deathly fear of flying. Now, it was because of Rachel Mitchell bringing out these inconsistencies or flaws with her own story that had been pushed and just, had flooded the zone of the media that you began to think through this a little bit more seriously. And yet when you saw people analyze both Mitchell's questioning and also Professor Ford and even Kavanaugh's statements, everybody responded so emotionally rather than logically. And I understand that emotion is something that's very important for a lot of people, but we shouldn't lose sight of reason and logic and other principles that were in play too. You don't convict someone in any court because you feel like it. You actually have to have evidence. Nobody pointed out that going into that hearing last week, there was no evidence to support the allegations. Coming out of the hearing, there was no evidence to support the allegations. That was not a major theme of the analysis, and it should have been. I don't really care. Some people might find Professor Ford credible. A lot of people did not. A lot of people had problems with the testimony and how it had a lot of gaps that didn't make sense. I didn't see that coming through in the news coverage. I didn't see it coming through in the analysis either. And there's no reason there couldn't have been a straight news story laying out some of the flaws and inconsistencies with her testimony.
People wanted a few good men, Colonel Jessup and Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, and they wanted Cruise thundering, "Did you order the code red?" And then obviously Nicholson says, "You're damn right I did," right? That's what they wanted out of this prosecutor. Or they wanted Johnny Cochran back in the OJ hearings, If it doesn't fit, you must acquit, like something that rhymes. And again, if it's methodical and it's fact-based, that doesn't play well in cable news for pundits because they want drama.
Let me follow up on this point. I think you make an important point. Mm-hmm. Is the audience smarter than the people making the presentations in the media?
Absolutely. Now how I know that? Because before the 2016 election, The Hill does an analysis of all the major newspapers across the country and their endorsements. And we narrowed it down to 59 papers based on, I believe, subscription levels. 57 endorsed Hillary Clinton. 2 endorsed Donald Trump. You know what that got Hillary Clinton? A concession speech. In other words, people didn't listen when they were told how to vote or how to think. They said, we could do our thinking on our own, thank you. So I always go back to that stat as, yeah, the influence of the media is 1/10 of what it used to be back when we were growing up in another time that I won't name.
But it's also why it's very important for people not just to have good reporters who are reporting the facts, but analysts who actually represent that portion of the country that is largely ignored or derided by others in the media. If you are watching the hearing with your own eyes, and a lot of people did that, and then you hear people giving analysis that just doesn't make any sense, and people being very focused on emotion, and then also for being focused on emotion, being pretty biased in how they're focused on emotion, because both Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh gave very emotional testimony, but only one seemed to get the benefit from a lot of analysts.
Are you saying that journalists primarily live in New York, Washington, and Los Angeles?
Yes.
And they don't represent the middle of the country? Okay. Bob Schieffer, who I like, he observed on Face of the Nation last year that 1 in 5 journalists live in New York, D.C., or Los Angeles. Those are only 3 cities, and yet 20% of the people that work in this business live in those places. It's called the Excel journalistic corridor that we're on, particularly with New York and Washington. And yeah, they're living in their bubbles, or they're in their elite towers, and they're not listening to people. When I go to parties, I was at a block party last week, and yes, there was beer there, a keg, right?
Did you throw any ice?
I did throw ice, yes. I threw a bag also in a game called Corn Toss, but that's another story for another time. The point is that I just spoke to people conversationally. And I got feedback that I was not seeing on television, particularly from women, when it came to Christine Blasey Ford or Julie Swetnick or anybody else that's involved here. So, yeah, get out and talk to people once in a while. Go to a bar, have some fun. Maybe you'll get another perspective.
Don't forget, folks, almost every weeknight you can catch me on Levin TV by going to crtv.com/Mark, crtv.com/Mark, or give us a call at 844-LEVIN-TV. We'd love to have you at our conservative community there.